I was called the voice of doom for the first 3 years of my broadcasting days because I was the chief newscaster at the CBC. And I did their nightly news. And there was nothing but bad, dire news, doom news. So 1940, 41, and 42, I was the voice of doom.
Lorne Greene is dead. The Ottawa-born broadcaster and actor underwent surgery recently for a perforated ulcer, but then he developed...
His passing made headlines on several continents. He was a Canadian of international renown. He was a professional, a pragmatist, a pioneer, and he had long since earned the respect and affection of his peers.
He was an extraordinarily sensitive and willing actor. He never tried to take things in his own hands. He was a man of great bulk, great heft, both physically and vocally. And everyone, I think, expected Lorne to be a very commanding person. But inside that commanding person was simply a very nice guy and a very willing and dedicated artist.
And people say he was the voice of doom. I don't believe it. He was the voice of strength. He gave our country a presence. I think Canada came of age during World War II, and I think Lorne had a great deal to do with it because he had such respect. He gathered such respect from the rest of the news-gathering media all over the world with that voice.
You hear a lot of talk in Hollywood about stars backbiting and complaining about how many lines of dialogue and how big their parts are. That never happened on that show. And I think one of the main reasons it didn't happen was Lorne set the tone for that. That was never Lorne's concern, who had the biggest part. Just that we did the best job we could, and we had fun doing it.
Launching his radio career in his native Ottawa, Lorne Greene soon moved to Toronto and became the chief CBC newscaster in the early 1940s.
There are reports of a great naval battle in the South Pacific. The largest convoy ever to set out across the Atlantic Ocean from Canada has arrived.
I remember listening to a newscast of his in which he was reporting a death of a child at a level railway crossing. And he kept saying, I do not understand why these things are called when they are too late. And I was so arrested by this man that, and I don't know, I was 12 or 13, 14 maybe. I thought this man really has the courage of his convictions. He's standing up in front of a whole nation and saying, this is wrong and this is what must be done about it. And a child is dead. Now, when is something going to be done? And I was absolutely flabbergasted by this man. I'd never met him. I didn't even know I was going to go into this business. But I thought, this is somebody very powerful and very wise and very strong and somebody I would like to know.
And more Canadians got to know his voice in movie theaters during the war.
First time I heard myself from the screen was back in 1940, and I had done the narration for a National Film Board film. And I went to the theater one night, and good heavens, there it was. You know, and I remember the title, but I heard the narration, I heard the first words, and I remember the words, the vast Atlantic. And I heard those words, I said, oh, that's familiar. Oh, my goodness, that's me. And, you know, the theater was full Saturday night, right here in Toronto. And I wanted to hide, because I knew everybody recognized my voice. You see, nobody recognized my voice. I could hardly recognize my voice myself. In fact, I said, that does not sound like me, you know. I thought I sounded terrible, and I was so ashamed of it. I slunk out of the theater.
It is a fine summer morning. Two Canadian boys, Flying Officer D.M. Bitsy Grant of Watrous, Saskatchewan, and Flying Officer J.A. Morton of Gadsbury, Alberta, prepare for a raid on an important munitions train, known to be proceeding to German-occupied Lille. And the Mustangs fight the air. Every day, planes of the RCAF, Mustangs, Hurricanes, Mosquitoes, train busters roar on. And from Vancouver and Fredericton, Yellowknife and Tadoussac, from Montreal and Winnipeg, Kamloops and Toronto, from Calgary and Halifax, from Pacific to Atlantic, the men and women of the Royal Canadian Air Force, the wings of our continent, sweep on into the day of victory.
I won't be missed anywhere. I'll slip out of this world without leaving so much as a gap.
This building housed the Lorne Greene Academy of Radio Arts, which opened its doors shortly after the war ended. It trained many of Canada's future broadcasters, including producer Drew Crossan, Gordy Tapp, seen on the left, and Rita Hands, who became Lorne's first wife. Among the faculty members was actor, writer, director Mavor Moore.
So I came back and joined the faculty, which was a most remarkable faculty. Many of the leading people then in radio in the late 40s, Lister Sinclair and Andrew Allen and John Draney was doing some teaching there. And we had a remarkable group of students because they were all in this post-war period looking for careers very, very seriously. For the first time, there was the possibility of a career as a performer in this country.
He'd come into class, Steve Brody's speech class, and he'd, with that scowl of his, he'd sort of cover the room, and we'd all be sort of trembling with, oh my God, is it me? Am I in trouble again? He'd look around and he'd spot somebody, Linder, in the hall. I'd go out in the hall, and he'd say to me, what are you doing tonight? I said, oh, I've got my writing assignment to finish. I've got acting exercises. I've got my documentary to document. Lots of homework. He says, good. You're doing it at my place. You're babysitting. Babysitting? What choice did I have?
Many years later, Cease Linder photographed the Academy's building being demolished.
Some years ago, I believe you started a theater in Toronto, didn't you, Lorne?
Yes, I did.
Theatrical group, I should say.
Well, I didn't. I was one of 7 who did back in, so many years ago, 1949, I think it was, Jupiter Theater. We had it was a very ambitious group of people. I remember Glenn Frankfurter, John Draney, and Len Peterson. We opened. Our opening show was Brecht's Galileo. Man, that's a breaker for you. As a matter of fact, the opening night, the biggest snowstorm to hit Toronto in 5 years, I think. So the curtain couldn't go up for an hour and a half. People just couldn't get to the theater. And we did, I think, one of the best productions of Ladies Not for Burning, Chris Plummer, Don Heron.
When he went to Stratford, it was the 3rd season. And we did Julius Caesar and The Merchant of Venice and Oedipus Rex. Lorne was in the first 2. He played Brutus and Julius Caesar.
Oh, no! Tu Brute. Then fall Caesar.
Also in the cast was another future television star, William Shatner.
Go and commend me to my brother Cassius. Bid him set on his powers betimes before, and we will follow.
Shall be done, my lord.
And the next time I got to play with him, didn't get to do any of the television dramas, which he did several. He played Beethoven, and he was the dead ringer for Ludwig van. He played Othello, which was his great dream, and he played it well on television. And I don't know how in those days, because they had about 10 days to rehearse the whole play. And I know that Shakespeare was one of his great loves.
I think the first time I actually worked with Lorne was on a production of a Sartre play called The Unburied Dead, which was years and years ago. And it was live. In those days, we did a lot of live TV. We did all live TV. And I remember Lorne as being a most diligent actor, most concerned, gentle man. He worked harder than any 12 people that I knew to get everything that he wanted to be right. He wanted the author to be expressed. He wanted to express himself. He wanted to give us the best chance that we had.
Lucy, how often have we talked about our dead? We had no time to bury them even in our hearts. No. I won't be missed anywhere. I'll slip out of this world without leaving so much as a gap. Be nice to think I was indispensable to something. Or someone. But I know I'm not. Incidentally, Lucy, I love you. I can tell you now because it doesn't matter anymore.
No, it doesn't matter.
No? That's that. Really no point in my being born.
Lorne went from there, it seems to me, right to Hollywood. No, he went to New York first and got in a play with Catherine Cornell. It was about the UN and had a successful run. And then he kept disappearing from us. He would come up and do the odd television show, but he was being pulled down south more and more. And he played a variety of roles in a series of, he was on Playhouse 90, and he was on all the big drama shows.
And why did you leave Canada, Lorne?
I wanted to act. And there wasn't any place to, on a full-time professional basis in Canada. I had a call from an agent who said, would you like to, are you interested in a Broadway show? And I said, well, who's producing it? He said, Leland Hayward. And I said, oh, Leland Hayward, South Pacific, Mr. Roberts. I said, well, who wrote the show? They said, Lindsay and Krauss. I said, oh, pretty good, you know, Life with Father and the State of the Union. I said, well, who's the star of the show? I said, well, Miss Catherine Cornell. I said, oh, well, what part are they considering me for? Yeah. I said, part opposite Miss Cornell. I said, well, where do you want me and when? After the Cornell show, I went out to the coast, and I did my first picture. It was the Silver Chalice.
A good guy or a bad guy?
Oh, I was a real good one in this one. I played the part of Peter the Apostle.
A good guy.
A good guy.
A good guy.
And then I did other things with Edward G. Robinson and Ginger Rogers.
He also appeared in Autumn Leaves with Joan Crawford, in The Gift of Love with Robert Stack and Lauren Bacall, and in numerous other feature films with such Hollywood stars as Lana Turner, Yul Brynner, and Bridget Whitmark. In 1974, he was in Earthquake, featured with Charlton Heston and Ava Gardner.
He was a dear, dear man with a marvelous sense of humor. One of the dearest memories I have about Lorne was running into him in a dry cleaners in Toronto. And I was abundant or great with child. And he was just going down to the States to be a big star. And I said, oh, I think that's wonderful. I think it's absolutely super, Lorne. I think I may even have called him Mr. Green. I'm not sure. But I said, well, it's marvelous, and you're going to go to California, and are you going to change your name? And he sort of looked at me as if I was some kind of wild, fat creature from somewhere, and he wasn't quite sure. He said, well, I'm not sure, Kate. I've done quite well with it up to now. Would you like to use it?
You'll make me feel that I'm the one who has to ask for forgiveness.
I didn't mean to.
No, you're right. I'm wrong. Put me on the debit side. My full name in Red ink. I admit it. I'm a self-educated failure. I don't know what to do. To do or not to do, that is the question. You know, I could spend every night reading the classics. But the problem facing us is what to do about Bert. Well, it's simple. You say the word, I'm ready to serve your best interests and help save Bert.
What makes you so sure that Bert needs to be saved? And what is he to be saved from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you.
Well, I am upset. Why shouldn't I be? I'm his wife. And if you're the father... Forgive me, Mr. Hanson.
Oh, no. You're right to protect him. You're more than a good wife. You're like a friend and a mother. I envy Bert. Having you to help snap him out of it. But let's take my position. Like in the storybooks, we have a hero and a heroine. But I'm not your villain. What I am, we'll let the gods decide.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I suppose I can be listed as a millionaire. Cowboy millionaire.
Fletcher Markle talked with David Dortort, the creator and producer of Bonanza.
He has done nothing but give the show a great deal of credit all over the world. He brings a combination not only of strength and authority, but humanity and compassion and understanding and warmth. All the things that a truly great actor brings to a part.
You scamp! Is this what you've been doing all night?
All night, Pa? I thought I was just getting started.
It's a great pleasure, Mr. Cartwright.
Out! Out, you little rapscallion, before I skin you alive!
Lorne was stern in class, but businesslike, you know. I mean, he ran a tight ship. And when he caught some misbehavior, you know, he'd give you that stern look, that scowl, that penetrating eye line, woof, when you felt it, you know. I understand he got that from his father in Ottawa, who was a bit of a patriarch, too. But not through reprimanding kids by whacking them around. He just gave them a look. And Lorne used that in his role as Paul Cartwright.
Thing figured pretty good, ain't you, Paul? But you figured one thing wrong. You going.
That's right, I'm going.
No, you ain't. I thought of it first.
Stop your argument, both of you. I'm going, and there's no more argument about it. I bought Indians long before you were born. I know this area much better than you do.
Paul, how you gonna get through without a horse?
Nearest Remuda's. Dark Canyon's only a couple of miles away. I can get there on foot and find me a horse.
Please let me go.
As the years went on in Bonanza, we became, I think, just about as close as two people can get. You don't realize as the years go by that in a 14-year span, working on a show with someone like that you spend more hours, more waking hours, in 14 years than you probably do with your family in an entire lifetime. And I must say they were 14 of the happiest years I've ever had.
Off the Bonanza set, he made commercials for medical plans, beverages, and dog food. And increasingly, he was in demand for personal appearances at rodeos.
I'm an old cowhand from TV land, but my legs ain't full, though my cheeks are tan. I work every day in the Bonanza set. I'm a rootin', tootin', shootin' Cartwright, you bet. I'm on NBC and in color yet. Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay, yip, 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 yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. One more time.
But singing in public was nothing new for Lorne Green.
Oh, the days dwindle down to a precious few. September, November. And precious day I'll spend with you. These precious days I'll spend with you.
He took me out for the day, like a dad. I guess I don't think it was my father, but it was like that. He was taking me to make me feel good. Took me to Windsor Castle. I hadn't seen it. And we traveled around. He took me to lunch. And I was starting to notice the reaction of the English public to Lorne. I followed at about a 20-pace march behind him as he walked through Windsor. And then he went past the castle. And the crowds were gathering because it's a Bencoy. We passed two of the guards, the Grenadier Guards who guard the castle in their little pillboxes. And they're like Madame Tussauds, you don't move. And as I passed them, I watched one of them communicate with the other about 10 feet away. Risking his entire military career, he said, "That's a fellow on Bonanza." And I knew that I was with a world figure of world importance.
Some years ago, I was in Los Angeles talking to the University of Toronto alumni there. Lorne, of course, was Queens, not the University of Toronto as I was. But he nonetheless held an enormous party on my arrival at his beautiful house. And he and his wife entertained, I would think, 60 or 70 people, all of them the Canadian mafia in Hollywood, from Bill Shatner up and down. It was an extraordinary gathering, but he did this quite frequently, I think.
After the Bonanza series made him an international star, Lorne Greene and his second wife, Nancy, bought a large Beverly Hills house and turned it into a friendly gathering place for visiting Canadians. When he wasn't working with his TV family of 3 grown sons, Lorne was a family man at home. He was devoted to both his real families, Chuck and Linda, the twins from his first marriage, and his second family, Nancy and daughter Gillian. And his career continued to flourish. In the late 1970s, after 14 years of Bonanza, he starred in a new television series, Battlestar Galactica. His rich voice added dignity to a documentary drama.
In the beginning. In the beginning. In a way, we all began here. It's even said that from the dust of Jerusalem, God formed man, and that Adam is buried here. Thus, dust to dust. Some is fact. Other is, well, let's say tradition. But in this place is the history of war and wisdom, peace and power, kindness, cruelty, everything, in short, that is man. Each of us, in his way, lives in 2 cities, his own and Jerusalem.
And with his son Chuck as producer, he launched a new and highly successful wildlife series. And the laurels continued to come his way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lorne Greene.
This time at the Banff Television Festival.
I do want to say to one woman who came up to me yesterday at Lake Louise, and she said, "Mr. Greene, you're my favorite fan." And I said, "Thank you." But that happens a lot. It's better than somebody saying, "Didn't you used to be Lorne Greene?" I had one occasion in Texas where I was going into a side entrance to the theater, and a little lady about 5 foot tall and about 75 years old stepped out from the gloom and said, Now, before you go in there, I want you to sign an autograph for my 5-year-old grandson, Mr. Arness. And I replied that I would be happy to sign the autograph, but my name really was Lorne Green, not Jim Arness. She said, that's all right. Kid can't read anyhow.
The same year, 1986, many of his former students staged a big reunion.
Then the big moment came. The orchestra, I think Billy O'Connor's band, struck up the opening themes. And it was, the usual one. Da, da, and everybody stood up. Da, da. Wait, it wasn't that. It was da, 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 the theme of Bonanza. And through these open doors, Gordy Tapp came in on a big horse with a Stetson. What an opening.
Actors, broadcasters, producers, they gathered at a Toronto banquet to salute their former dean and to help the performing arts lodges. In the front row, Fred Davis, Gordy Tapp, Alfie Scott, Murray Cherkover, and Lorne and Nancy Green. And in the same month, a triumphant homecoming to Ottawa.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lorne Green.
It was the 30th anniversary program of Front Page Challenge at the National Arts Centre, and Lorne Green was a special surprise guest. It would be his last appearance on the CBC.
Thank you very much.
But one thing about Lorne, he was very generous. He said to me, he said, look, if you need an agent, call me. And he meant it. And I did call him. Very generous, very thoughtful. Because his students were like his kids.
He's a very important figure in my life. He was the man who advised me when I wanted to get back into this business, having been a child star and then a teenage walk-on. And he was always there to help. He was a very unselfish, loving man, and I loved him.
The last time I saw him in the hospital, couldn't hear and he couldn't speak anymore. I looked at him and I said, boy, your hands look as solid as ever. He was always very strong. Strong hands, strong wrists. We used to arm wrestle a lot. And he hadn't moved in the entire visit I'd had with him. When I said that to him, he lifted up his hand and I held it and he tried to arm wrestle me. And he looked at me in the eye and smiled and nodded to me to let me know that it was okay, that he was ready. He'll never be forgotten.
For his early days on CBC Radio, as the voice of Canada, for his many outstanding performances in theater, television, and films, for the international status he achieved as Pop Cartwright, for his work, his spirit, his generosity. Lorne Green is and will be remembered.
When the autumn weather turns the leaves to flame, one hasn't got time for the waiting game. Oh, the days dwindle down to a precious few. September, November, and these few vintage years I'll spend with you. These golden years I'll spend with you.